Hey everyone, Kathy the Vegan Prepper here, and welcome to a day in my life. Vegan Prepper. Vegan Prepper. Oh, and Sage was saying hi. She's got a little fruit treat from the store. Anyway, today it's actually a little after 1. I only just now finished all of the shopping that I needed to do for my son's birthday bash tonight. We are having a big Korean feast, and he also requested a lemon cake. So I have already made the cake, but I still need to make the frosting and do all the decorations. And I just thought it might be kind of fun to show you guys what our vegan birthday party looks like. Kind of making everything from scratch as is necessary. I will be testing a lot of recipes from the Korean vegan cookbook. But yeah, I just figured I'd film an intro and get home, because pretty much as soon as I get home, it's gonna be like, I'm gonna hit the ground running, you know, as soon as we get home to start getting everything ready. First on the list is to get the cake decorated. I used an awesome lemon cake recipe that turned out better than I expected structurally, and I will show you guys what that looks like when I get home. And I will also link the recipe down below. It's a delicious recipe, we've had it before. But yeah, anyway, all right, here we go. I gotta go home and get started on party stuff, yay! Okay, actually, first thing we're doing is having lunch, and so ramen cups to the rescue. It's not ideal, but I have some baked tofu. It's absolutely delicious, and we're gonna put that into the cups, and so Sage and I are each gonna just have one of these. That will be our lunch, and then I will get started on my work. Time for frosting. I'm using the classic Wilton vanilla buttercream recipe, but I'm just using 100% shortening rather than adding butter in. And so I've got that in here along with my vanilla and lemon extracts. Because it's a lemon cake, I added a teaspoon of lemon extract to give me that lemon flavor. And now it's just about adding the sugar in 1 cup at a time. You need 4 cups total. Each one of these bags from Trader Joe's is just a little less than 4 cups. So I have a little bit on hand. I get the organic because organic is guaranteed not to be whitened through bone char. So if you want to get a vegan sugar, you get an organic sugar, and then that lets you know for sure that it's vegan. So just, yeah, 1 cup at a time. And I will link the recipe down below. And we'll beat it with my stand mixer, which I basically only use a couple times a year, primarily for making frosting at this point. But yeah, go ahead and get that done and get started on the cake. Mix slowly at first so that you don't end up with a snowstorm of sugar. Frosting is extremely stiff right now, which is typically the way that it looks once you've added all of the powdered sugar in before you add in your milk. So I am using soy milk here. Obviously I spilled a bit, but this is an 1/8 cup, which is 2 tablespoons. I may not need the full amount in order to get this to a consistency that's good for piping. But I do, so I'm going to need a combination of frosting. I will need a combination of frosting that is hard enough to pipe, but then also some that is soft enough to spread. I'm not entirely sure if I'm gonna need 2 batches of frosting, but I might. And so if I'm looking at the frosting and it looks like I'm gonna need more, I'll make a second batch. I'll just make 1 for the decorating, 1 for the spreading, like just to get the base layer of frosting on the cake. But yeah, this is like basically frosting making 101. You add just a very small amount of liquid at a time. Less, honestly, than you think you will. Like that was kind of too much, but this is very stiff. But if you're trying to get the consistency right, you need to add like maybe a 1/2 teaspoon to a teaspoon of liquid at a time. And I know that sounds crazy, but really it will soften overly quickly. So anyway, I'm going to continue the process. here is my cake, which is, again, it ended up doing so much better structurally than I expected it to. There's barely any dip in the middle. So I recently did a purge in my kitchen and I got rid of a whole bunch of my cake pans. This is the only one that I kept. It's an 8x3 Wilton pan. And the reason I kept this one is because you can actually bake your entire cake recipe usually in just one pan. It takes close to an hour to do so, but then you end up with something that you can cut. And usually I turn this into 3 layers using this little thingy to cut the layers. But yeah, basically I'm just gonna get this out, get it onto this cutting board and start cutting the layers and get to actually decorating. Okay, major technical difficulties. The little wire cutter was not working, probably because this cake is too cold. So I had to switch to a knife and do it by hand, and I clearly did a terrible job. But basically, I'm just going to have to make sure that I keep the orientation of the cake correct when I go to start frosting, and you know, just basically put stuff over one layer at a time and make sure I don't rotate the layers at all. And then it should still be basically okay. At least it's gonna look okay from the outside, but yeah, it's pretty bad. The top is pretty uneven too, so we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so another thing that I like to do, because it has been so long since I've really baked or decorated a cake, is when I'm frosting the inner layers, and I'm frosting anyway, so I just go ahead and fill a piping bag and I start practicing, because it's just been so long. So I'm just practicing basically like little puffs of frosting and trying to decide how dense do I want it versus how loose, but also seeing for sure this frosting is too stiff, like it's too dry, it's not making it smooth. So actually that's a good thing, because of the, you know, the terrible cutting job I did, to have a stiffer frosting on the inside to sort of help hold things together, I think is gonna be a bit better. But yeah, so I just sort of pipe and practice, and I will go back and smooth it, and that's how I built my layers. And it just, you know, once you flatten it, it's flat. So it's just a quick tip. All right, eating the test slices from the uneven pieces. It's pretty great. Thanks to Elliot for requesting lemon cake for his birthday, because it's ridiculously good. So I've got the crumb coating done, and I'm gonna stick that in the fridge while I make another batch of frosting. And these are gonna disappear pretty quick. I'm coming back in to fix this crumb cake, or this crumb coating even more. The cake just is so ridiculously uneven. You see these layers, like it's terrible. Like, I am far from an expert baker, but even for the level that I am, I made a bunch of ridiculously amateur mistakes with this thing. So I'm doing my best to sort of fill in the gaps with frosting. So just sort of coming around, doing my crumb coating to sort of even out those spots that are uneven. And yeah, hoping for the best. Once it chills in the fridge, it'll be more solid, and hopefully will end up looking like a symmetrical cake once I'm done. Okay, it's as done as it's gonna be, and now I just poked it. Oh my gosh, you guys. Okay, anyway, I don't own a turntable, which would make this process so much easier, but you know, I just sort of turn it as I go. Anyway, there was a huge cut, basically, or the layers, there was a major gap right here. So the frosting does help fill that in. It's not perfect, but I think it should be good enough, at least once the final layer is on. Second batch of frosting. This one looks a lot better. The cake is in the fridge, and I have cleaned a lot of the dishes, but I did make another batch of frosting, so there's still some more cake dishes to clean. And before I start dinner, I will clean all of the cake dishes, just get the kitchen totally reset, and then basically get ready to mess it all up again. But I thought I would show you the dishes I'm planning on making for Elliot's Korean birthday party out of the Korean vegan book. So basically right now, while I am waiting for that crumb coating to set, I'm going to just start looking at all of the things I've planned to make and make myself a list basically of like an order of operations of what to do when, so that I can try to do this in as streamlined and efficient a way as possible. If you've watched the channel at all, or you watched our couple chat where we talked about our strengths, Adam talked about this as being one of my strengths, being able to streamline a lot of tasks and sort of make it all work well. So basically it's going to involve looking at the recipes of what I'm choosing, and then sort of looking at the prep work that needs to be done in advance, and obviously starting with the things that take the longest, and then, you know, letting the last minute stuff be the last minute stuff. But let's go ahead and look at the actual recipes. Here is the book that I'm using, and we'll see after this dinner if I can recommend it. Although I don't know, I feel like I can recommend it already. It's a beautiful book. Reading it is just beautiful. And I can't imagine that the recipes aren't good. They look amazing. I'm going to be able to tell you for sure though, once we're finished with our dinner. All right, we've got rice, although I'm not going to be using her recipe. I did not find the correct rice, so I am just going to be using basmati rice. I know it's an Indian rice. It is nothing like the short grain Asian rices that go with Asian cuisine typically, but that is what I have, so that is what I'm using. We are obviously going to be having kimchi, but unfortunately I didn't make it myself this time around. I have made it before, but we are not making it this time. It would take way too long. I bought a jar of vegan kimchi at the store. Here is the brand of kimchi that I bought. I found it at Whole Foods. I've also gotten it on Azure Standard. We will also be having kale muchim. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but that is one of our side dishes. We're having the Korean style omelet. That's basically almost like a rolled egg. And hopefully mine ends up turning out like this. I actually purchased the pan I needed to make this at my local Korean grocery store just today. So hopefully that turns out well. We're going to be using Just Egg replacer, and that is the one that she recommends. Actually, Korean vegan is the reason that we ever tried Just Egg in the first place. So I am definitely grateful for her recommendation, because I never would have tried it otherwise. We're doing this potato dish, which sounds ridiculously good. It's actually got a sweet glaze, but look at that. I can't even. I'm so excited about this dish in particular. But yeah, that's going to be our final side dish. I am making this rice cake soup as part of the main dish. So basically these little Korean rice cakes are these little oval shapes in this soup. A lot of times you see them, they're more of a cylinder shape. So here's one peeking out of the photo right there. But I made a few dumplings, like homemade. I never managed to make all of the dumplings I needed to make a full dumpling side dish. So when I was looking through the book this morning and I saw this recipe with the soup that had dumplings in it, I was thrilled to pieces, because now I can just make a soup that has some dumplings. I don't have to make enough dumplings for everybody to be able to have like 8, which is what they would eat. But yeah, so I made my own homemade dumplings, not her recipe in the book. But hopefully this turns out really well. She has a dumpling recipe in the book, so you would not be without the ability to make it. I just wanted to show this picture though. I've talked on the channel before about moments of kind of, I don't know what the word is, but it's like just the moments of realization of how universal culture is. Not that it's not separate. Obviously, Korean culture, all cultures are also, you know, they're very unique to to who they are and where they are and all of that. I'm not trying to say culture is all the same, but there are certain experiences that seem universal, or I just recognize, and I think food ends up being a kind of an equalizer, or something that is almost universally relatable across cultures. And when I saw this picture, I literally got tears in my eyes, and I'm doing it again because I have some really beautiful memories of visiting my Polish relatives and all of us, the women, sitting around the table making pierogi. And I feel like this picture looks almost exactly like that experience. And obviously these are little dumplings, very similar to a pierogi, although pierogi are typically with a half moon shape, obviously. But anyway, yeah, it just warms my heart to see that. I don't know. It just is kind of cool. I feel like on a certain level, we can relate a little bit to each other. So like in this part here, my dumplings are not nearly as lovely as my mother's. Yours don't need to be either, but there are a few recipes in this book that make me feel more like her daughter and my Halmani's granddaughter. And I would say like my babcia's granddaughter, because, with Poland, it's babcia is grandma. And the final thing that I will be making is this tofu, spicy, crunchy garlic tofu. So, yeah, just look at it. Just look at it. I can't wait. So that's what I'm going to have to try to figure out how to get it all done. And so, yeah, I have a little bit of planning to do. There are 5 different dishes that I need to actually make myself. The rice is not, I'm not counting the rice because that's just going to go straight into the Instant Pot. And so that's going to be kind of set it and forget it, and it will be done. So I'll probably start that relatively soon in the preparation. The kimchi, like I said, I purchased it. So basically what I'm going to do is dump it into a bowl. That's all I have to do with that. So I could do that, last minute at dinner. But in case you lost track, I have that glazed potato dish, the omelet, and the kale dish, which I believe will take less time, like at least maybe not so much the potato. The potato dish is relatively involved. But as far as all of the recipes from looking at them, it looks like the soup, the little omelets, and the kale are kind of the least fiddly of the dishes. So I will likely attempt to make the soup at the same time as I'm making, say, the tofu, and like kind of save those for the last. But I will most likely do the potatoes and the kale and that little omelet thing like first. Then I can leave the potatoes warming in the oven. And I have potatoes to prep for both the glazed potato recipe, and that soup recipe has like half moon potatoes in it. And so I'll need to like scrub potatoes enough for both of those recipes, and just have those ready to go. So that's probably my very first step, is going to be scrubbing those potatoes. But tofu needs to get pressed as well for that other recipe. So tofu needs to get pressed. And so, yeah, I'm just sort of thinking of the things that will take the longest, and probably pressing the tofu, making the rice, getting the potatoes all scrubbed, because one of the recipes asks you to soak the potatoes in water for a while before you cook them. And so, yeah, I'm just going to have to go a little bit at a time and sort of figure out my steps. But I do believe that this is doable. I was going to make a much larger, fancier meal. As much, like, I recognize this is still a lot. But a lot of Korean dining has, multiple side dishes. I'm not gonna have time to get that much together, especially since the cake has ended up taking way longer than I expected. But I still think that we should have dinner on the table, hopefully by 7:30 at the latest. But yeah, I guess I better stop talking and actually get to it. And I don't know how much progress video I'm going to be shooting, just because, again, of the nature of like how much I'm going to be doing. I don't know that I want to try to add filming to that. So hopefully you can forgive me if all you get is the after, like, finished dinner shot. here is the final cake. I've never mastered the smooth buttercream, but basically just sort of did an ombre effect on the bottom, which I'm pretty pleased actually. That turned out relatively well. I'm not as pleased with the top, but you know, it is what it is at this point. 16 cookies, and yeah. I definitely, if I were doing this again, I think I would just do the cookies and just make the whole thing very minimalist and let the decoration be that ombre effect. I think that would have been perfect, but you know, this still looks pretty good. And especially, as I've said, I am an amateur completely. And I know it's obvious. I'm not fishing for compliments. I know, but hey, it actually tastes amazing and this will be fantastic. And my son likes it. So that's what matters the most. Here it is. It's gorgeous. It's almost 8, so it took a lot longer. But there's the tofu. It's insanely good. The potatoes also insanely good. The kale is, well, it's kale, but it's still really good. These faux egg roll things are also fantastic. And this soup is kind of out of this world. So you're really going to enjoy this. And I can talk a bit later about how each thing actually tasted. Oh, we need to get the kimchi on the table. And Adam is bringing up the rice. Okay. The party was amazing. It was absolutely incredible. It was delicious. Everything was super good. Do I recommend this cookbook? I absolutely 100% recommend this cookbook. I'm absolutely going to be going through this and making more of the recipes out of here. It's like, so far, it's like 10 out of 10. Every single thing that we tried was absolutely amazing. The only thing that I would like to say, so like I said, as a little blip, I believe that it's too salty. And that isn't just because our palates kind of are adjusted to a little less salt. I don't think that that's what it is. I think it's genuinely kind of too salty. That being said, I think a lot of the recipes are obviously meant to be enjoyed with plain white rice or just plain rice. It doesn't have to be white rice, but with plain rice. And so the white or the rice itself will end up kind of diluting so that the flavor is meant to spread out over something that's kind of plain. And I get that. So that's possibly part of it, although we were kind of not necessarily 100% mixing everything like equally with rice because there were just so many choices. We were eating more. But I will say for sure the soup, because so like for instance, the soup itself, it was like 3 cups of broth is what the recipe originally called for. And then, my gosh, my hair. But anyway, 3 cups of broth, what the recipe called for. And the initial part of the recipe has you use 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 full teaspoons of salt. And then you add 3 cups of vegetable broth. Anyway, I added a whole bunch of extra water, like a ton of extra water. And it was still like really salty. So definitely I would say watch some of the salt content. It is possible, you know, I know that Korean food is big on a lot of fermented foods, fermented veggies, the kimchi and all of that stuff. And it is entirely possible that the Korean palate is adjusted or used to a lot more salt. And so that is just something to keep in mind with the recipes in that book, at least so far. In my opinion, it's by no means a criticism because like I said, I do recognize why there might be such a high level of salt in the recipes. It's just for me personally, I really would like to cut that back. That being said, also, I see she's occupying herself kind of with coloring, which actually means that what she's doing is dumping crayons all over the floor. But basically, hi Sage. Okay, mommy's trying to film this video now. All right, love you.
Love you.
Okay, go please have fun with your coloring. I love you. Okay, so I know I probably should cut that out, but it's reality. This is what's happening. I'm trying to set her up with something and then it doesn't work at all. But anyway, so what was I saying? Yes, with the cake. So for notes on the frosting, what I would like to say about the frosting is I definitely will next time probably use closer to the original recommendation of the Wilton buttercream, which is to use half shortening, half...
And 16 the candles.
Yes, and 16 candles. Half shortening, half butter, obviously a vegan butter substitute, either whether it's like Miyoko's or, you know, an Earth Balance stick or whatever. I will definitely add that in. Wilton, it's just like the frosting itself ended up being kind of cloyingly sweet. And again, we're not necessarily used to super sugared up things like that, but at the same time, I know I'm missing a certain savory taste to the frosting. I tried to add salt in to counteract it a little bit, but it just didn't really quite seem to work. They do recommend in the recipe that if you're using all shortening that you can add like I think it was something like a teaspoon of the artificial butter flavoring. I am not entirely sure if that is vegan, but also I don't know that that would be my preference. Also, I kind of hinted at it throughout the video that I have a very minimalist set of like cake decorating stuff now. I have only one pan. I've got just like a few basic tools to create. I have like 2 frosting heads. I've got I've really pared down. I used to have a ton of this stuff, but especially because I only use it maybe once or twice a year, 2 or 3, maybe 3 times, I don't know, to make cakes. And so it's just not something that I felt like I should be devoting that much kitchen space to. So I don't use enough stuff, I think, or I don't use it enough to justify the space it takes up. So I don't want to buy an entire bottle, even if it is vegan, of artificial butter flavoring just to use it only like once or twice a year and probably have to throw it out soon or like well before it's used up. So probably next time I will either use the homemade butter recipe from the Homemade Vegan Pantry by Miyoko Shinner, which is the best, it's right here. It is the best butter ever. Like, it's seriously delicious. Or I might just buy her butter at the store. Or again, like I said, use like Earth Balance, to make my frosting. The other thing is I have to give, you know, it's all been glowing reviews so far. I have to like kind of knock the Trader Joe's powdered sugar. I think a lot of the issues that I had with my frosting was also because the powdered sugar was very gritty. It was grainy. Like when I was doing the test, like the frosting test, I'm like, please ignore my dirty fingernails. I tried so hard to clean. I've been doing so much yard work right now, really getting ready for fall and winter planting. That's why my hair is a mess. I'm a mess right now. And I tried really hard to clean it all, but it's like, it's not going to get fully clean until the next time I take a shower. Do you know what I mean? Like, you probably know what I mean. If you're into gardening at all, you know what I'm saying. It's like, once I shampoo my hair, my nails will be clean. Until then, it's not going to be 100% clean. So what was I saying? Yes, the Trader Joe's powdered sugar, I'm super distractible today, you guys, was very gritty, very grainy. And it just was not good. Like when I was doing the test, so when you're testing for the peaks on your frosting, you sort of get frosting in between your fingers and then you go like this to test how stiff it is so that you can adjust it to your desired outcome on your cake. And so that's very like, if it forms a nice peak, that's usually perfect. If it kind of falls over, that means it's a little too soft for decorations, but it's probably perfect for the spreading of the frosting on the cake. So every time when I went to do the finger test, I could feel the granules of sugar on my finger. And so that frosting is like, I purchased a store-bought powdered sugar rather than making my own, which I know, you know, it's very easy to make your own powdered sugar if you have a high-powered blender. Just Google powdered sugar. I'm not going to try to give you the measurements because you use a combination of sugar and cornstarch, and I don't remember what the measurements are, but I've done it many times successfully for many applications. Like, for instance, when I make a crinkle cookie and you roll the dough and then you roll the dough into a powdered sugar and then you bake it and then it ends up being like a crinkle cookie. And so my homemade powdered sugar does great for stuff like that, or just as a coating on top of something, and that's fine. However, I can't ever seem to get homemade powdered sugar to be the kind of smooth consistency that you need to create beautiful, crisp cake decorations. So that's why I went with a store-bought powdered sugar. However, I might as well have just made my own powdered sugar because I think that my powdered sugar might actually have been a little less grainy than the powdered sugar from Trader Joe's. And I don't know if that is an all the time thing or if it was just a bad batch, but as an FYI, apparently it's possible that the powdered sugar from Trader Joe's will not be the best for creating your frostings. And so I know that now, and I'm disappointed, but it was kind of too late once I got into it. And I just sort of had to make do. So even though I did a really good job on my second batch of frosting and I whipped it nice and, or I mixed it, didn't whip it at all. I mixed it nice and slow so that I didn't whip excess air bubbles into the frosting, which also makes it not turn out smoothly. Even though I made sure to do that the second time around, I still did not end up with a very smooth frosting, and I think it's probably because of the grittiness of the powdered sugar. Anyway, this little ending update was way longer than I planned it to be, but thank you so much for watching to the end. Hopefully that was helpful and useful if you are working at trying to maybe create some of your own cakes or create some of your own stuff. Again, I'm going to be linking that cake recipe down below. I'm going to link the frosting recipe that I used down below. I will link this book and this book. Oh, sorry, Sage, I don't mean to cover you up. I will be linking both of these books down below. So they will be affiliate links, but obviously if you want to just Google them yourself and not go through my affiliate links, here they are. You can find them. But yeah, if you feel like helping us out or just as saying a thank you, if you're gonna get the book anyway, using our link is helpful to us, and so we really appreciate that. Anyway, I think we're gonna go ahead and scooch because this girl apparently needs some attention. Do you need attention?
I need my animals to get by you.
Oh, you want? Oh, so another thing that she's been doing lately is she likes to gather her, I set up the tripod for her with my camera and she gathers her animals and she makes her own videos now because she's seen this basically since she was born. So yeah, I guess we'll set up and she can make her own video once I'm finished with this. So, all right then, I guess we're gonna go ahead and go. You wanna say bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
Ah, nice. So as always, I hope the rest of your day is good and your life stays wonderful. Let me know anything you think in the comments down below. See you guys later. Bye.